Yo, what's going on, you guys? It's your boy 3 Stacks in this thing, baby, representing TKOG. And today I'm coming at you guys with a deck profile / discussion. I just want to give my analysis on how this deck's performance affects I want to say not just how this deck's performance affects the format that it exists in, but also how the format that this deck exists in affects the quality of this deck's cards. This deck's ceiling, its potential, and its ability to play through disruptions differently from how other decks can, or to play through disruptions that decks normally cannot. And also, just to preface, before we get any further, we're in a hand trap heavy format where a lot of decks are tripling down on effect negation hand traps like Imperm, Veiler, and Ghost Mourner. We're seeing consistently seeing lineups of Ash, Droll, Imperm, Veiler, and Mourner. You know, that's freaking 15 hand traps already. And then Nibiru is in every main deck, so that's 18. So, like, before I even get any further in this video, let's talk about that. Because, like, this is a deck profile / analysis and, like, discussion on, like, why I think Lab is so good and, like, why it's my primary contender, in my opinion. So, like, we'll talk about a lot of things, like the quality of this deck's cards. It's seemingly what appears to be high committal, but really low committal plays that allow you to, like, net a surplus of advantage, and how picking up one card can change the dynamics of your inboard, and the ceiling is raised exponentially every time you factor in, like, the extra card that you can add to your combo line, and every time your opponent draws a hand trap that doesn't work. That's what we're going to start with here. This deck does not lose to Droll. It does not lose to Imperm because it has consistent ways to play around it. It also has ways to literally never get Veilered. And on top of that, it is able to play into Mourner with cards like Big Welcome Engrave and Arus, which not only will dodge the Mourner or the Impermanence, but also will allow Arus to come onto the field to convert into cards like Chaos Angel, to dismantle more cards on their board, banish their Fire King Island, clear their whole field, banish cards in their spell or trap zone, banish their follow-up, banish their Flame Birch, banish their Link monsters, and you can literally Chaos Angel 3 times in this deck. So I'm going to be pivoting so many different directions. I want you guys to, if you're falling behind, just rewind really fast, because I will be on one topic, but then there's so many facets to that topic that it'll sound like I'm going all over the place, but it's all correlating to the same initial thing that we're talking about. So it'll be a divergent content. So for one, this deck has, like, no way that it loses to Nib. It plays heavier into Bystials, DD Crows, Ash, and Bell. Those are hand traps that are, like, worthy of this deck's, like, attention. Ash Blossom is the only one that's main deck worthy right now. A lot of the other cards you will see post game 2 and 3. Why do you say that, 3 Stacks? I say that to say that this deck's game 1, this deck has the best game 1, in my opinion, of the format. There's so many cards that it can start to struggle against that don't see play until post sideboard. So game 1, this deck has utterly the best performance that it will ever have. This deck has extremely versatile and powerful, impactful, diverse plays that come from just resolving furnitures, just from committing your ladies onto your field. This deck has, like, so many tricks up its sleeve. So the hand traps that were aforementioned are the ones that are good against this deck. So if this deck doesn't lose to Droll, and this deck doesn't have to play into Nib and can play through Nib consistently, why isn't this deck that popular? Your question's as good as mine, and I don't really have the best answer for you, because I feel that this deck's hype died down when the fire hype built up. I think that this deck, currently in this format, has the best Nibiru interaction. It's very similar to Orcus and Eldritch, how you can activate Nib and chain an effect that causes Nib to not be able to resolve fully. The reason why this deck plays Nib the most efficiently this format is because the initial line for Fire Kings and Snake Eyes alike to beat Nibiru is by placing Flame Birch into the spell trap zone via the temple, so that when you nib them, they can get Flame Birch online. And you also are able to trigger Princess at the same time sometimes, like, depending on how they sequence. Like, it's pretty insane because, like, they get so much advantage, so much follow-up, and, like, on top of that, like, can trigger their Flame Birch. They can full combo through Nib. And the problem becomes, like, they summon Borreload Savage on their 5th or 6th summon, which means you have to nib them. But if you nib them before the Savage came out, you would trigger the Temple to bring out the Flamberge to convert the Flamberge into token to IP, get Flamberge effect, get 2 bodies, full combo through the Nib. Why is that not a factor for Labyrinth? Because when Labyrinth activates Nib and chains Furniture, no monster gets summoned. You have no idea how impactful that is, and how it means that the line that Snake Eye secures to be able to play through Nib is non-existent in this matchup. And that's a strength that deck has that is completely nullified just by this deck's strange nuances. Cards like Lady, just having face down sets and having untargetable, indestructible Lady wins you games by itself. This deck's ability to combo with 3 to 4 cards or even 2 cards if it's just Arus plus Strap on your opponent's turn in top of hand traps is the reason why this deck, uniquely compared to other high tier and high caliber decks this format, does not have to play as many hand traps because its engine is so consistently able to play on turn 0 that 1 hand trap plus furnitures and a coup clock is more than enough, as opposed to Ash, Imperm, and Ghost Mourner. If I just had either one of those 3, and I had Arus to flip all of your cards face down with Daruma Cannon, or I had Arus plus Welcome and Lady, which is the best 3-card combo in this deck, you can turn 0 Eradicator people. If I turn 0 Eradicator you, and you don't Ash or Bell my Welcome, what is better? Having 5 hand traps or just Eradicatoring your opponent? Turn 0 Ice Dragon imprisoning your opponent. Turn 0 Daruma Cannoning to set 5. And give their princess no room to summon itself. So this deck is very, very strong in my opinion. And the Nibiru interaction, I think, is one of the strongest interactions this deck has because, the combo line that plays through Nib and Snake Eye is so consistent and so frequent that a lot of times you don't have the luxury to draw Nib and no other hand trap. A lot of times you don't have the luxury to draw Droll and no other hand trap because the deck's ceiling is so high that as long as it opened enough gas, the Droll can be played through and the Nib can either be played through or they prevent the Nib from occurring, because sometimes it's not even worth dropping the Nib when they full combo anyways, which essentially means you neg 1, you hand looped yourself for 1. I'm gonna grab my water. So I think all of these things are very integral when we talk about Labyrinth's place in the meta. So let's talk about Ash and Bell. These are the single-handedly most impactful hand traps that are good against this deck, that operate to be proactive to cut this deck from engine. Because the unfortunate fact for the non-Labyrinth player is if this deck is allowed to touch the cards that it needs to touch, if you pick up the right cards, you have low committal, high reward plays that allow you to navigate and sequence through interruptions that people have no business playing through. The problem with Labyrinth is if it's allowed to play, there's no deck in the format currently that can keep up with its snowball, that can keep up with its grind, and can keep up with the constant mechanics that you apply to your opponent. Your opponent has to be so sharp to even be able to navigate through this in sequence through the boards this deck can make and to play through the disruptions, because this deck is unique in the sense that it has the ability to interact with any card in the game. This deck, if it's allowed to play, is able to get its way in a lot of scenarios where other decks are not able to have their way. Raid Raptors are able to put up 3 towers. Fire King Snake Eye cannot let that go uncontested. They have 18 hand traps for a reason. This deck can Daruma Cannon on turn 0 consistently and infinitely loop Daruma Cannon. This deck can infinitely turn skip you with different dimension ground if you need your graveyard resources. This deck can check decks like Branded and Raid Raptors and other decks that uniquely are centered around one summoning mechanic. Different dimension of ground and dimensional barrier give you coverage in a lot of matchups. Eradicator Epidemic Virus for rogue decks and spell heavy decks, including, it's just broken. It's honestly mind-boggling what this deck can do, and it's a lot to play. So that's where Ash and Bell become so important that if you don't pick up a copy of those cards, you just lose flat out. So that's the unique thing about this deck that's also unfortunate for the non-lab players, that you can draw 4 hand traps, but if you don't have Ash and Bell, sometimes 1 Ash is not enough, especially considering Transaction Rollback exists right now as a card. And on top of that, if you drew a hand with Imperm, Valor, and Nibiru against any other deck, that would be insane. Like, that's turn ending. Against Lab, it does nothing. Oftentimes, it does nothing. Especially when you set your cards and now you're summoning onto your opponent's turn. Like, if you don't commit anything on your turn, Imperm doesn't work because they control cards. Veiler only works in your turn, and you're not even going to play in the Nib. So, like, what happens is this deck makes people that are playing these 18 hand trap lineups draw dead cards. So your game one is exceptional, and they're forced to make low, like high committal and awkward side decking patterns because they have to sacrifice by getting cards that are dead out of their main deck and putting in cards that are more impactful. So what happens is, because they're siding for the more conventional and popular decks in this format, they now are pigeonholed into sideboarding in cards that sometimes aren't even as good as the hand traps, but can come up more, like a Cosmic Cyclone, or a DD Crow, or even sometimes having to side in like Tactics cards, or Evenlies, or Dusters, or Lightning Storms. The fact that this deck can force your opponent to do things they don't want to do when they have no other choice is just a huge strength. And like that is like a very nuanced statement to make, because it sounds really good, like a lot of decks can do that, but like everything that was aforementioned are all unique reasons why this deck forces your opponent to do things that they don't want to do. The strength of Labyrinth is forcing them to play your game. Like, they're not really playing Yu-Gi-Oh! When they play against this deck. They're playing against the Lab strategy, and Labyrinth is unique and able to control tempos and able to control the dynamics and fundamentals of how your opponent sequences their plays. They have to play around certain cards, not because they're hand traps. And that's the difference. Like, hand traps, there are unique lines that are easy to memorize that you can play through hand traps with any deck. And every deck has to learn that. But Labyrinth doesn't have a spreadsheet on how do you play through this. You have to Ash Rebel the trap or lose. That's literally how Lab works a lot of the times. It doesn't matter what like game plan you have to beat Lab. If you cannot stop welcomes from resolving and you cannot stop them from getting engine, it doesn't matter. There is nothing to play through anymore, because unfortunately, nobody really has hatred for trap decks. You don't see like Imperial Iron Wall or Royal Decree. You don't see like Red Reboots gone. You don't see Pankratops and Cosmic Cyclones and Twin Twisters and Dusters and Lightning Storm and Evenly Match and like Dinko Sekkas. All this back row hate that you would see in a different format is non-existent. These people's side decks are loaded with more hand traps and cards like Crossouts and Summon Limits and Ghost Bells and DD Crows. And like, those cards are cool. They're cool. They're sometimes good against this deck, but like, it's the awkward cards that are higher impact, and the only cards that can indefinitely prevent you from doing what this deck wants to do are Ash and Bell. Bystials and DD Crows do not always work for you because they don't stop welcomes from resolving. So that's like the huge thing. Like, to preface the start of this video, let's see where we're at. Looking good, looking good. Is that Labyrinth is in a unique position. All right, so I think that it's my deck for right now. It's my go-to. I think it's a lot stronger, in my opinion, like than the Fire decks, because it doesn't share the weaknesses that the Fire deck has. Labyrinth's weaknesses are to cards that people either don't play at all or side deck. So, and there are also, what's so unique also, and like kind of a little bit annoying again for the non-Labyrinth player, is that the cards that actually work against this deck, there's counterplay and ways to circumvent and mitigate those interactions when they do occur. So this deck's really strong. It's very, very powerful. It's able to set up infinite loops of like, you just don't get spells and traps, you don't get monster effects, you don't get grave, you can't summon anything at all. It can win in time with cards like Secret Barrel. It can do anything, because what's cool about Konami's like, you know, ideas when they create traps is like, there's a normal trap card for like almost every interaction. This deck can access any of them because of Lady number 1 and infinitely recur it because of Lady number 2. So there's a lot more reasons why this deck is so good, but those alone are like nuances that are good enough for me to consider this deck over the Fire deck. Even if it was a scenario where I had both, I would just play Lab anyways. So let's talk about my most successful list recently. I have consistently been going undefeated online and IRL with Labyrinth, and I have a new list to talk about, and it's still a deck profile / discussion. So let's go into our non-engine first. So we'll talk about the hand trap lineup. which do not be frightened or scared away by the low amount of hand traps that I play. And it's ironic that this is a format where 9 hand traps is a low amount, because the Labyrinth deck has turn 0 plays by itself. So there's a lot of decks that cannot break your board with Engine. Lab can beat the full 3 tower inboard with Raid Raptors with all Engine. It can out any towers, any card that's unaffected. And cards like Daruma and IDP paired with Lovely on field breaks any board. It trades extremely well, and like all across the board, it really has no bad matchups. It's just crippled by its ability to not get access to Engine when it's cut off of its welcome traps. And I'm here to tell you, like, there's ways to build your decks to circumvent that issue. I'm also on the Gamma and the Clawed By. So these cards are just like 2 extra cards to like give me defense. If I own transaction rollbacks, perhaps this Gamma package could just be 2 rollbacks. But I don't own rollbacks, and I have a budget alternative for anybody that's not trying to play rollbacks or is not able to. There are unique different ways that you can play Labyrinth. A lot of it's Engine cards and like it's like specific archetype cards are like so underlooked and undervalued. So Ash, Nib, and Imperm are like the safety net for a lot of decks. Even against the like lower tier decks and the more mid-range decks like the Ritual deck, these hand traps are just really, really strong all across the playing field. Imperm is used as Engine and able to like turn on interactions for this deck. You can have infinite setups with a lot of different 2 and 3 card combos. Ash Blossom is generically safe, and there's no better deck to play Nibiru in right now because this card is never going to trigger Snake Eyes, any of their stuff. Like, it's not going to be triggering the field spell, which is super important. And it's not going to be able to, like, you're like also are able to dismantle princess lines. Like, because if you summon Nib and like go off and like they put a fire on board, like it's just weird. Like, that Nib not summoning is such a good thing for so many reasons, specifically for this format. And like, this is the only deck right now that's meta relevant that can do that. So this is the best hand trap in this deck, if you ask me, specifically because the lines that play around it don't exist when you go get paired up against this matchup. And Call By is just utility. And then we have Engine requirements, which is just the 1 Lovely, 1 Shivara, and we'll talk about the Goo right now as soon as I finish this baby lineup. 1 Field Spell, 1 Daruma, 1 IDP, and 1 Escape. These are all Engine requirements, cards that you don't necessarily like to draw. Now, these cards specifically are like insane to draw. Shivaro is really, really good to draw. And even though this card's not that great to draw, I have a lot of lines, like, and another great reason to play 3 Arias is like, I have a lot of lines where I beat Ash and Bell because I just simply go search this card off of my Ariana, and then go Arias effect to special her from hand, do my furnitures, activate my Labyrinth traps. They can't Ash or Bell because I special this from my hand off of Arias. That's broken. I don't see Labyrinth players doing that, and they need to do it more because that's a simple, easy line. Some people don't play Arias at all. Some people play 1. But like, the higher amount of Arias you play, the higher chance you have of getting that interaction. Like, because it's a 2-card combo with Ariana and Arias. If you have only 1 Arias, then you have a lower chance of seeing that interaction. But just going Arias, Ariana, grab this, Arias special her, cuts your opponent off from Ash and Bell, which are the only hand traps that actually matter. That's a huge deal. It's a very high IQ play, and I recommend anyone playing this deck, take my advice, get better with Labyrinth. And then this card is really here because I don't own rollbacks. It's not as potent as rollback because it does chain directly, like Lady, it chains directly to the card. But what it essentially is rollback on legs. When you activate a normal trap, this card becomes that card's effect on activation. So what it's doing is it's mimicking its effect on resolution and not becoming the activation of the card. So if you activate Welcome Labyrinth and you chain Labyrinth Barage to Welcome Labyrinth, you summon 2 from deck. If you activate Big Welcome Labyrinth and chain Labyrinth Barage, you summon 2 from anywhere. So it is like rollback, and because it's a Labyrinth card, you have more consistent access to it than you do to rollback, which is the kind of like the drawback, or I would say like it makes up for it's kind of like it's compensating for where it lacks in resiliency that the rollback gives you through hand traps, in its consistency and high chance of seeing it because it's a Labyrinth card. So it's easier to access and it allows you to combo earlier. Rollback, you have to hard draw. This card you can see anytime you see Engine. And it gets really, really nasty post-siding. Like, it gets really crazy. So Labyrinth Barage is something I recommend anybody with the budget alternative. This is the best budget alternative because it is also an Engine card that allows you, it allows you to see it anytime you want to, as opposed to hard drawing rollback. Rollback is in RNG. This is a guaranteed thing. And it's pretty powerful. It's a really, really good card. It's not better than rollback in the nuance of like playing through Ash and Bell, but it is better than rollback because it's an Engine card and it's a lot easier to use and access. And there's no life points drawback like at all. So now, like, the bread and butter of the deck, every remaining card in this deck is all Engine and, like, gas. So I don't know who told you, who and your mama told you to play any less than 3 ladies, but I'm here to tell you right now, there are, like, literal combos that you can't do if you don't play 3. Opening this card, paired with furnitures, allows you to have interactions that you don't get. Even minimalistically, just ditching Big Welcome off of a furniture to set while you have her up, it makes you able to like have a well-timed bounce. So like a lot of times, like I haven't lost to any Snake Eye decks at all, like playing this deck. I've only dueled 5, but I've literally 2-0'd 4 of the 5 and only went to game 3 against 1 and I still won. But just having Big Welcome to bounce the Bestower, the Flame Princess, literally like it secures the back for you a lot of the times. Like they have to commit 2 extra bodies to get back to the Princess. So like furniture with Lady and Big Welcome paired with one other hand trap ends their turn. They crutch on Princess, and putting Princess back to the extra deck also means you don't have to worry about it later. This card's broken. It's like Dragoon once you have cards face down. She's an extender. She's why Ariana is always the net link worth of 2 bodies, which is why Ariana is a 1-card Yama. She's insane. In the mirror match, she's the best card like ever. She's literally so hard to out. There are really cool interactions with this card specifically, interacting with cards that target and destroy her. Cards like Escape of the Unchained, cards like Promethean Princess. If you summon her, because this is the card that triggers Promethean the most often, what's cool is like you summon her, they Promethean you chain of furniture, set a spell or trap. Now on res, she cannot be destroyed. They still get their body, but you don't lose yours. So she's a really strong card. And the fact that she gives herself protection from like everything, making herself like a Dragoon, makes her even more broken and powerful. Like she's insane. We have 3 Arus. Arus is just here to apply pressure. This card is a lot more powerful for me with Engine than the furnitures often, because like Arus is a card where like you're playing behind and you can up your tempo and get back into the game. Furnitures, like you're playing behind oftentimes with furnitures because the cards they set don't resolve. But with like Arus, you're able to like net a body onto field, which equates to Yama. So I have a lot of gameplay and like a lot of like scenarios where I've had furnitures engraved in Ku Klok and like traps, like a regular welcome, and I'm not able to get to them because I've been playing through hand traps. Like, I've been playing through so many that like I can't even get a normal trap to like actually pop one of the monsters on the field to give all my resources. But this gets half of what you need to make Yama, and Yama gets you to escape. When escape resolves in a simplified game state where you and your opponent have traded resources, you win the duel automatically. You often get upwards of a chain link 5 to 6. You get a +5 to 6. And you snowball uncontrollably. Like, so this card is so vital. I don't know who's telling you to play any less, but like there are so many reasons to play 3, including the interaction that beats Ash Blossom when we talk about this lady right here. This is a trick I picked up later on, and I realized I was playing the deck incorrectly when I had hands that could beat Ash, and I wasn't beating Ash because I wasn't playing correctly, because I wasn't thinking that Arya summoned her. It's a huge deal. This card is an infinite resource. It keeps coming back forever and ever and ever. Like, once you have both Ariana and her little sister set up, which we played 3 in 1, like, these cards, drawing cards, turns into, like, a huge advantage. Because, yes, you can draw them off these cards and set them, but they cannot be activated that same turn. But if you draw traps off of these and you have Arius in rotation, Arius can set the traps you draw off of them on your opponent's turn and keep playing. It's broken and overpowered when this deck can play. This deck gives you Fluanderies and Tearlament vibes, because your turn is every turn. You sometimes play more on your opponent's turn than they do on their turn, especially when you open the correct sequence to stop their plays. It feels really gratifying to say, I played way more on your turn before I even got to my turn. I have secured the bag because I've not only literally applied proactive pressure, but I'm starting my turn with bodies that equate into Chaos Angel to banish, go into Yama, grab my Shavara, pop my own Link 2, trigger its effect to add back Lady, Yama effect, bring back Chaos Angel, banish again, go into Muttcracker, bring back Chaos Angel, banish again, full combo, You nib me, I have welcome traps. It's crazy. So this is engine. This is like all gas. This card, even if I wasn't playing the Unchained build, this card is broken. This card has so many interactions that makes it like literally the best. It never gets Ash because they always save Ash for your welcome traps. And you can dodge Imperm and Veiler through your big welcome, or you just chain Arus, and that means Chaos Angel. So now you double for your trouble since you want to Imperm this and stop me from getting to Ariana. I'm about to Chaos Angel you, boy. And then this is the Nugo. So like I haven't been playing pots in my Labyrinth decks for a while. I know I'm crazy, but it's been working. I've been like literally clapping people up, bro, with no pots. So this is the Nugo. I'm just gonna check how I'm doing on time. Oh, I'm chilling. So this is the Nugo. This is just something that I theorized and I decided to just test it because I was over stressing about whether I just play 3 Extrav and 3 Prosperity or if I just try something else. Like the difference with this and those is like those cards can dig for anything. So they technically can be guaranteed engine, but what I like about Tour Guide is like it's also guaranteed engine as well. The combo with Tour Guide is essentially just normal her, bring out Rhino, go to Mudcracker, effective Rhino to dump Ariane or Ariana, and then you just bring them back off Mudcracker and you full combo. Now, oftentimes if Tour Guide resolves, it means that the hand trap that would stop Mudcracker and the hand trap that would stop Yama doesn't exist. So this card helps me with my checklist because I do like to check for Imperm, Veiler, Mourner. I like to know what they have. Does it mean that you have to play into them? No, not necessarily. You don't have to play into them. But when you know you can play through them, you do play into them. If I have Furniture, Big Welcome, Tour Guide, I full combo. It's crazy. It's literally so broken. It's so insane. So this is incredible. Tour Guide plus Trap with 1 discard is the most obscene board I've ever made with this deck. I ended on Abyss Dweller. I had Escape. I had Yama Engrave. I had the Link 2 up. I had just too much. Like, Abyss Dweller is insane. Like, and it could have been any rank 4. I could have just made Evil Swarm Nightmare as well, or I could have made a bigger board with links. It also allows you to, like, Goddess in the mirror match more consistently. Because whenever you're playing mirrors, like, if you're able to make this card, it helps you to out their lady, negate the rest of their stuff, and start negating their welcomes. Which is a really, really, really big deal. It's a huge deal. Also in the mirror match, Chaos Angeling their one-up lady is a big deal as well. So I've gotten a lot better with mirror matches, and I think that this card oftentimes is more powerful for me and has a higher ceiling than like an RNG. I'm not saying that the pots are not better. They are, but this is just something I'm testing because I'm still on my no pot like 90 boo boo. So Tour Guide's pretty broken in this deck, and it gives you 7 normal summons quote quote, but it's really, really worth it. We have 3 copies of Strangolier. We have 3 copies of Stovey Torby, and I've always been on 3 Kuklok. 3 Kuklok, we have 3 big, the best welcome, and then 3 welcome. You can outgrind any deck because of these traps and these cards. These cards are where your grind game comes from. Yes, she's broken. She can infinitely loop any traps that you want. These cards like kind of like accelerate your game plan a lot of the times, but these are the cards that you're searching and that you're getting access to. Like ultimately, like Tour Guide, the Ariana and her twin sister, like they get you these cards more often than not. Like Arus and Lady are a part of the equation, but these are the cards that allow you to play on your opponent's turn. These cards are hand traps. This is why your deck's engine is able to break boards when other decks' engines cannot. Like, this gives you an insane matchup against everything. I have an exceptionally good branded matchup, a really, really, really good Silent Force matchup as well. I think this deck can only lose to itself if it doesn't get to see engine, but as long as this deck's able to play, it can do virtually anything you could think of under the sun. So I've always been on 3 welcome. I'm also, it just helps with the math when you max out on Arus, like to open one of the 6 welcome traps plus the Arus, it gives you like an insane combo. Arus, welcome, and Lady is how you turn 0 Eradicator people post sighting. I have opted out for the Eradicator because it hasn't had the highest ceiling against the fire decks lately. But when you play against decks where turn 0 Eradicator is good, or turn 0 D-Barrier, or different dimension ground, you do that combo. You also post, even before you get to side, can just Lady set Daruma Cannon or IDP, and oftentimes that ends the duel itself, which is just broken. So these cards are insane. Labyrinth with the Furniture's pitching big welcome, it gives you insanely huge pushes before you even get to start your turn. Like, even if you're just setting big welcome to activate it on their turn, you get to start your turn with bodies that make cards like Yama, they make cards like Mudcracker, they make cards like Chaos Angel, they make cards like Goddess, they make cards like the Unchained Link 3 and 4, they make cards like Dark, they make cards like SP. They literally, you start your turn with the resources to break your opponent's board, make your own, and play the duel. And the fact that before your opponent can even start responding to anything you want to do, you're forcing interactions with cards like Chaos Angel, your Link monsters, and your Big Welcome Engrave, and chain blocking your furnitures, which is another unique thing. Once this deck gets rolling, that's why it also is a problem, because you're always able to chain block what really matters. That's what makes Belle diminish in value significantly. Like, if you have her up off of the interaction I was talking about, and your trap can't be bailed, or you just regular welcome, like, and you get to chain block and trigger her and your furnitures, you can just always put her as the highest in the chain, and they can't Belle, Cool Clock, or Stovey, or Chandelier, or regular welcome. So Belle diminishes in value significantly as long as you know what you're doing. And that's why I just feel like this deck, as long as you are like a competent enough player and sequence your plays correctly and open well enough to actually be able to play the game, I feel that this deck has one of the highest chances in the building to be able to deal with and contend any board, any matchup, any type of strange scenario. This deck's nuances are like another reason why it really doesn't lose to the same cards other decks lose to, but it also, again, it gets away, it's able to have its way in scenarios where other decks are not able to play through that. Like, it's able to outplay a lot of counterplay that other decks just simply cannot. So I think Lab is pretty crazy. I think this is the most significant portion of the deck is the welcomes. I max out on them. If you take my advice, don't play 1 welcome, don't play 2, play 3. 3 Stovey, Torvi, 3 Chandeliers. The tour guide stuff could be pots, but I freaking love it. The Sisters, Arus, the Butler's Broken, and then 3 Silver Castles. This is like my recipe for success, and I've had wonderfully significant good results playing this build the way that I play it with the mindset that I approach every matchup with. And my mindset is always, as long as I can play, I can win. So I'm not overly concerned with how necessarily I'm going to navigate this matchup. I'm more overly concerned with how can I pick up the right cards. Because as long as I can pick up a copy of Lady with furnitures, I feel like I can beat any deck in the room. As long as I can pick up Engine, it has low committal plays that snowball, and a 1-card resolving means you can play for the rest of the duel, which is a very significant thing. We have, for the extra deck, double Yama. This has come up more often. The Yama interactions, Yama is like better than Mudcracker in a lot of scenarios, especially like in the scenarios where I'm under pressure, but it equates to very similar like a Mudcracker. Even Yamaing back your Mudcracker is like pretty huge. It's a pretty big deal to like keep Mudcracker online to apply pressure every turn. But Yama into the Link 2, when you open like the big combo, what I do when I'm Chaos Angeling people, I use Chaos Angel to make Yama convert into Link 2, and I use Shavara to target my Link 2, pop it, and Yama back my Chaos Angel, and use this to add back Lady so that I can just have Silver Castle on the follow-up. It's a really big deal. It's huge. It does a lot. And if you haven't Silver Castle that turn, you just summon her, turn her in Chaos Angel into Mudcracker, and then Chaos Angel again. That's how you Chaos Angel 3 times without Labyrinth up. We have the Link 3, we have the Link 4. This card's pretty nuts, especially in the mirror match. The Unchained package just raises your ceiling, I think, tenfold. It allows you to play through more. It gives you critical mass in scenarios where you like wouldn't have it, and it allows you to like secure the bag when your game plan kind of like fumbles. When your traps get negated, but you have bodies on field, it means you can resolve escape and get your furnitures back, your Coup Clock back. You can get your welcome back face down. Escape, like I've literally high rolled off of escape so many times back into the duel. And the reason why it's so important, I can't stress it enough, is because this engine gets you a normal trap that makes a monster leave the field. That's like the biggest deal. It doesn't have to do anything else, bro. Like, Yama doesn't have to be as broken as he is, but the fact that you trigger all of your furnitures and all your Labyrinth cards, and then Yama and the Link 2 to target a Fiend and add it back and summon a Fiend, you get 2 more. It's just too broken. It's too much. This deck's too hard to kill. We have 1 Mudcracker. You could arguably play 2, but like, I don't only have 1, and I've been working really well with the 1. This card's broken. Goddess in the mirror match is insane. Goddess against the Fire King deck is insane. Against any Snake Eye deck, it's really, really broken. It's very strong. It's just like literally, you don't even need it to out towers. You can Daruma people. This card's like really to like blanket a board and then prevent follow up. Then we have Dark, SP, don't make these that often. You'd be surprised for me, like when you hear me say like I don't use SP that often. I welcome a lot. I use both the welcomes a lot. So a lot of times I'm using Unchained Link 2 to go into Link 3. I haven't made Anima in like 2 weeks now. Wallow's broken. This card is like another reason why it's really good to play 2 Ariuses. This card raises the ceiling of your deck by like I don't even know how much percentage. Because it allows you to play anybody's deck. It's a really, really big deal. It's really, really strong. It gives you what Flamberge wants to do, which is really, really good. So I like this card a lot. It's the Flamberge in your extra deck. We play Dweller. We play Evil Swarm Nightmare over Baguska. I think Baguska is not that great this format. A lot of people are playing Charmers. You can just make a Charmer, bring a guy back, and easily out Baguska. I think Evil Swarm Nightmare is a lot more powerful. It's like Daruma Cannon, like before you resolve Daruma. It's a layered interruption. It like plays into talents, but like this deck literally doesn't care about talents at all. So it's a really, really strong card. Typhon should be at 2, and then this is my proxy for Chaos Angel, which is totally correct at 1 for now. You could play more, but like I've only needed 1 more when it got banished, and it just hasn't happened. That's my deck profile. That's my analysis. That's my discussion on Labyrinth. I have so many more good things that I can teach you guys and say about this deck. Keep following my channel, and I'll make you a better Labyrinth player if you aren't already a better Labyrinth player. God bless you guys. Make good choices. Have a beautiful night. Peace.